Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon. Thanks for coming to our monthly City Council briefing. The City Council briefing is really intended to provide an opportunity for the city to hear from a couple of their city councilors regarding key issues that we're discussing, considering bringing forward, or that will be on our meeting in the coming weeks. So appreciate everybody's time today, the public watching, the media that's here. We're just going to talk about a couple of topics, and the main goal is to open it up for questions on things that you want to hear different perspectives on. I'll start today and want to share a couple of things. First is regarding the Delbridge collection. Last Friday, the Delbridge report was made public from a consultant that came and did a study, and I'm serving on that work group right now, and I think that report is one of the best reports that I've seen that's been done by an outside consultant. Extremely well detailed, yet at the same time expresses kind of the overarching vision, things really, really well. I'd encourage the public to go to the Delbridge page, which is a sub-page of the mayor's page, and look at that report, read it. There's been a lot of interest in the Delbridge collection. You can review all the detail you want and see. I would just summarize it this way. The report makes it pretty clear that we have a quality collection that could be used for education and science. I don't think there's any argument about that after reading the report. The question for us now is, what's the best way to use this collection for education and science? Is it here in Sioux Falls, or is it some other museum around the country? And so what the working group has decided to do is to receive ideas, proposals from around the country here in Sioux Falls of where this collection could be. It could be here in Sioux Falls at the zoo. It could be another place in Sioux Falls. It could be anywhere in the country. I think what I'm personally interested is this: where is it going to get the most viewing? I think we need to take into consideration, if it got an opportunity to go to a museum that's got high foot traffic, why wouldn't we consider sending the collection somewhere where it's going to get a lot of people using it for education and science? If that's here in Sioux Falls, that's fabulous, but I think we should go in with an open mind and determine the best way that this quality collection can be used. So again, I'd encourage the public, go look at the Delbridge report, reach out if you have questions. The other thing that is kind of boring government stuff, but really important, is that the mayor delivered his 5-year capital proposed budget to the council at the end of June. This is kind of his 5-year plan of how he uses the second penny of our taxes to pay for capital infrastructure needs. And there's a couple of things in there that I'd highlight for the community to be thinking about. The number one thing that's received the most news probably is a proposed purchase of the land that could be used for the potential conference center downtown called the Riverline District. And so the mayor's proposed to allocate funding from the entertainment tax to purchase that land. Next year, the council will be considering that in the upcoming budget discussion in September. This is a huge discussion point in the community. I think a couple things need to be clarified. Number one is this is just the land purchase at this juncture. This is a key piece of land. Whether we believe in a convention center or not, this is going to be a major entrance point into downtown, especially when those viaducts are redone. And so we need to take into consideration, do we need to have that land available for development no matter what? And then secondly, the thing I've been telling the public is this. From my perspective personally, this project does not move forward without a public vote. I believe there will be a public vote on this project, and so the land, the council will consider purchasing, but at some later date, there will be a public vote on moving forward with the convention center downtown. And so I'd encourage the public to stay engaged on this. There's going to be an opportunity to express yourself, at least from my perspective. That will take place over the next year or two, or whenever deemed appropriate. A couple of other things I'd highlight from the 5-year capital plan is, as usual, kind of sometimes we take it for granted, but a new fire station and also a police report to work station also in that plan. I think that's really important. We want to see our law enforcement spread throughout the community, that has ease of access for them to get to work, but also to respond to things. And I think neighborhoods just feel better seeing law enforcement close by. So I appreciate the approach that's being taken there and hope that we can get those things done. And then also, I would just point out to the public, there's major infrastructure continued in there. Two big things that I'm watching is we've got to bring to completion Veterans Parkway, and that's a huge project that continues to be done. But then also Arrowhead intersection is also a really key intersection coming up, and there's a grant in there from the federal government that's being applied for or has been applied for, and $25 million project. That's a critical project that I hear about almost every single week from constituents, email or phone call saying this thing's built for X number of cars, but Y number of cars are using it. So we've got to do something about that intersection. I know other councilors are hearing about that as well, and the Public Works team's trying to put together a plan. How can we do that size of project? We're looking for federal funds, but if federal funds aren't available, how do we bring that project to completion? Final thing that I'd highlight in the 5-year capital plan is, obviously, it includes debt service for the proposed recreation and aquatics bond that'll be considered September 3rd. And so we continue to make serious investments, not only in infrastructure and public safety, but also in recreation and our park system overall. So those are a couple things I'd highlight, the Delbridge report and the 5-year capital plan, that are really important for the community to be aware of. And Councilor Basie is going to come forward and talk to us about mosquito spraying and other thoughts as well.
Well, hello. Good morning, almost afternoon. I first just want to thank Councilor McCorris just for casting that vision forward and some great leadership. I'm going to zoom back to the here and now with mosquito spraying. We might have a few welts or a few itches, and a few other councilors and I have had the opportunity to chat with the Director of Public Health, Mr. Kipley, and just learn a little bit more about what they're doing. First and foremost, maybe one of the most impactful things is that when we see those trucks going through the neighborhoods and spraying, that's actually one of the last lines of defense against mosquitoes. And so there's larvicide that's being sprayed or that's being applied to pools, particularly when we look at our park system that's right along the riverway where it was flooded. Unfortunately, we are the unfortunate benefactors of a lot of that larvicide application washing away in the floods. And so what we saw as an after effect was a little bit of some reactive spraying. So we have been informed that there's a lot of active participation within the health department to reevaluate maybe some potential staffing strategies for how we could be a little bit more responsive in some of those situations. But then also just as a reminder that it is really a 3-step process. So they've got larvicide, they've got fogging that they're doing, and then the spray trucks that is the most visible piece of the puzzle is really kind of the last resort. So currently they are continuing to test pools for different kinds of the mosquito species and treat the pools with larvicide, but then also continue the other lines of spraying in the parks, along the river greenway, and citywide. So we've been really grateful for that communication. We're also thrilled to hear reports that we're on pace for budget, and so budgeting and money to make sure that our community is safe from mosquitoes is not at this point of a concern. And with that, I think I'm passing it back to Councilor McCorris.
Thank you, Councilor. Next up, we're going to have Councilor Barranco come forward, share some thoughts on potential South Side pool and other things taking place with the council. Councilor?
Hi, everybody. I've been asked to talk a little bit about our plans to get a pool on the south side of town. You know, we don't have a pool south of 49th Street, and we have an enormous number of people living south of that boundary. I think, I talked with some of our staff, and it would be the 3rd biggest city in the state if you just took the number of residents that live south of that pool. So we need to get one. The families deserve it, the people deserve it, the children deserve it. And so what we've decided to do is we're going to go ahead and create a committee that will be involving both members of the council and members of the administration to examine some other sites. We did have a memorandum of understanding. I was very excited about that, but it may be that it's a little bit too south for us to bring online quickly enough for families to enjoy, at least at the pace. This was something that was in the 2012 plan. So we're already 12 years into this, and we haven't got this done. We need to move quickly. We need to respond to the families who have spoken out about this. We need to get something available so that these families can have a wonderful summer swimming. So we're going to examine a number of sites. All of these sites will be in residential areas. All of these sites will be in the south. They will eventually connect to the bike trails. They will have good public parking, and ultimately they will be connected to a fixed bus route so that all of our folks that want to go swimming and form community and have a experience to make friends and interact. There's going to be shade there. There's going to be picnic tables, and it's going to be the kind of thing that we want to put down your phone, touch grass, get in the water, and be happy as a community. That's going to happen by the summer of 2029. So that committee's job will be find some good locations, identify some options, go ahead and we're going to appropriate money to acquire that land, and then we're going to come forward, I think, before Christmas to the full council and present some intelligent options. So I'm excited about that. We want to get a South Side pool done. That's what the families want, it's what the voters want, and it's what I want.
All right, well, with that, those are the main items that we wanted to cover, but now we're basically here to answer questions, respond to other issues, or the things that we just talked about. So feel free to ask a question. One of us will just hop up and respond or call on someone specifically.
Yeah, I guess I don't know who this might be a question for, but have you guys talked any more about the fee structure and sort of the business model with the pools, ahead of any vote on that aquatics bond? Where are we sitting with what those might cost the public to actually use?
Great question, and I'd encourage you, I believe there's a Parks Board meeting tomorrow afternoon. I believe the administration's weekly press conference tomorrow morning will be dealing with that issue specifically. So over the last month, Councilor Siggety and I specifically have been in multiple meetings with the Parks Department and the administration. All councilors, we had a working session where we got to provide feedback to the administration, and I believe at the Parks Board meeting tomorrow, the administration is going to be bringing forward a proposal.
On the Delbridge, do you feel bound at all by the fact that the original Delbridge was built with public money, there was a public vote? Is there a philosophical responsibility here to honor that, or how do you navigate that?
Great question. I think from my personal perspective, obviously if we are 5 years away from a public vote, there would be a different situation. Depends on how you define that term, lifetime. I think we've been far enough away now where it's not definitely hands are tied that it has to be in that spot, in that place. I do believe philosophically that we're bound to make sure we're caring for it and we're honoring it, but it doesn't have to be in that specific place. I don't believe we're bound to Sioux Falls. I think I would understand that people are going to make that argument. The question I would have is, so does that mean it ends at 75 years, 125 years, 40 years? What's the magic line, and how do you decide what that magic line is? For me, is what gets the most use and visibility to the public.
You talked about, Councilor Bronco talked about the acquiring land for a Southside pool. You're talking about in this capital budget, so you would put it in this year's budget to acquire it in the fall?
Right, great question. I think that understanding, and this is still a little bit in flux, but my understanding is that we would be appropriating money immediately so that the land acquisition would happen immediately. The reason that's important to me is that I don't want this to be pie in the sky, 6, 7 years down the road, a great idea. I want this to be actually happening. I want the voters and the families and the people that want to swim to know that it's underway, that it's real, that we're got a specific piece of land that we're going to acquire, and then we begin the process of design and we begin the process of making sure that one of the things is we had with our memorandum of understanding down south, there was a problem of whether or not we can have infrastructure suitable to that site at a fast enough pace for swimming to be occurring. I don't want this to be in 2032 or something. So, that's one of the things, but I also need to make this concrete. It needs to be an actual, not a dream, not a vision. Those things are great, but this needs to be real. So that's why we're trying to get that appropriated to acquire the land, yes.
How much land do you need, and what's it go for?
Well, that's a good question, and that's part of the thing that we're going to figure out. We're going to appropriate an amount of money, but then we're going to look to make the most economically wise decision that we can. I think that moving the timetable up may necessitate a smaller footprint. It may necessitate something that's more of a neighborhood pool than a big water park, but those options are we have to kind of look at it before I can answer that question and find a great piece of land. And if it's ideal, if it's perfect, then I'm going to fight for the money that's necessary to get it. But at the same time, if we can find something that's a really good bargain, then that's better for the voters. That's better for the taxpayers.
Is it possible it's an existing park? Because in planning, there's always park land planned. Are there any existing pieces of land that the city already owns?
I am very open to looking at parcels that whether the city or parks already owns and controls. I think that's a terrific idea. I'm definitely going to be spending time looking at those possibilities, but I'll say we won't limit it to that. We want to get the best location that we can possibly get. Now, if that's something that we've already got, then that's wonderful, right? Because that's going to cost us less. We can start faster. We don't have to negotiate a transaction. On the other hand, if we don't own the perfect site, then we want to say, hey, here it is. Let's buy it.
You guys aren't talking about a supplemental appropriation. You're talking about 2025? Because if you're going to bring proposal recommendations in December, why would you need the money now?
Oh, right, exactly, yeah. I'm getting the nod here from my vice chairman that is,
I think you'll see in early August, a budget supplement from the city council brought forward for land acquisition funds this year. Right now, we're in the process of reviewing funds that were budgeted this year for parks acquisition, trying to understand how much that's already under contract, what's available. But Councilor Barranco and myself, or other councilors I know are very interested, will bring forward and sponsor a budget supplement in September that would allocate funds immediately to have that land purchased.
Okay. Is that so you can make sure whatever's left in this year's budget doesn't get eaten up with or get caught up in the big budget next year? Because in practical matter, you're probably not closing on anything until after January 1, right?
yeah, that sounds right. You know, those pieces are still kind of under construction. What I'm doing today is I'm announcing that we're going to go ahead and put forward a resolution and get this committee going. I've still got to talk to the finance department about the exact wording of the piece that appropriates money. So I don't want to, get ahead of my shoes here. And do you have a dollar figure? We've got some ideas of a dollar figure. Obviously, to get enough land to do the kind of park that the city deserves, it's not going to be a small amount of money. But I don't know that negotiation, that discussion has that been finalized? So not quite yet.
Is a cool mill?
I'm thinking that it could be anywhere between $500,000 and $1 million.
Okay. Is this a white flag on seeing the South Side pool included in the bond that you guys will consider on whatever?
No,
date?
I wouldn't call it a white flag. I think that what we are struggling with is the fact that, we want to make sure that this happens. And so we've got to create a situation where we can make sure resources are committed and that promises are kept. One way of looking at this was to include this under the bond that we were discussing. Of course, that would substantially increase the bond necessarily. And then we would also have to deal with the fact that we've only got a memorandum of understanding for that one location. So we couldn't proceed immediately without, unless we were going to open our mind to other ideas. So I think that's necessary.
Why has, you said that it's been in the plan since 2012. Why is there resistance? Why has this not happened? Everybody knows we need it. The city's only gotten bigger since 2012, farther south, farther south, farther south. Why is it taking so long?
Well, I would say one answer to that is just the inherent slow pace with which government works. I would say perhaps also that we've only recently had people come to the council who are willing to give voice to the passion of the people who are speaking out for this. I think that one thing that is absolutely true about Sioux Falls is we have a phenomenal park system overall. It's really, really terrific. We're fortunate to have it, and I think nearly all of our citizens, they're thrilled to have it. And so when you have something that good, when you have these wonderful resources, it's not necessarily easy to say, yeah, that's good, but we deserve more. And so I think that, for a time, people were very comfortable with the resources that are available to them, the marvelous parks. But recently, of course, in the last couple of years, we've been talking a lot about aquatics. We've been talking about the two big proposed projects. And I think once it was okay to talk about that, then people said, well, what we really are needing, what is really the shortfall, is that we've got everything down, from 57 South isn't served by a neighborhood community pool that we can all share and we can all find, fellowship at. And so that maybe pulled the lid off, making it okay to talk about that and making it okay to ask for something that a lot of people have wanted for a long time, but probably in the good way that people from South Dakota were being patient and waiting, and maybe now's the time to talk about it and get it done.
one of the issues with that pool in terms of putting in the bond, right? Because as you say, it's a neighborhood pool, which sounds like something less expensive than, say, Keene, which was what, 18 or 20 million to renovate. Are you doing a neighborhood pool because you need to keep the price point something you can pay for in a year? Because you're not going to bond for one pool, right? 20 million is a lot of money just to pick up and drop over here. You know, is that a driving factor in terms of why, of keeping it scaled down, to keep the cost down, to be something you can actually just say, we're going to pay for this?
Yeah, that's a piece of it, right? It's important that the project happen. And I'm not going to allow the perfect be the enemy of the good. If somebody says, well, David, we'd love to do that, but we just don't have this number, then I'm going to say, then we're going to do it at the number that we have. And if that means that it has to be scaled down a little bit, then it has to scale down. If that means it needs to be a little bit smaller, then it does. Because what we've got to figure out a way is to, get enough voices together, enough consensus that says we're doing this in some way, shape, or form. Now, given that we're doing it, given that we're spending this money to get it done and get it built and open in 5 years, what's the best thing that we can deliver for families? Does that mean water slides? Well, maybe, maybe not. But we got to think about how this is going to be used. We got to think about it that it's, people are swimming, but at the same time, people are gathering. People need to have shade. I think that's been an incredibly successful initiative at Laurel Oaks, at Terrace Park, at some of our newest constructions. People love the shade awnings, and I'm right there with them. I mean, if you're a parent or a grandparent and you're out there, you're watching your kids have a ball, you need to be somewhere where you could keep it a little bit cold. I mean, how hot was it this last couple of days? People are going to fry out there, so we need the shade. We need some picnic tables. We're running out of great places where people can have a celebration, maybe a retirement party, maybe a graduation, maybe this is a kid's birthday. That can happen at a picnic table in the shade by a beautiful pool. So this creates more things. You can't just say, well, if we can't have 10 water slides, it's not fun and people won't come. That's not even close to true. I think there's so many people in our community that grew up with the idea that a pool is just a place to swim. I mean, maybe it's got a diving board and you're in there and people are seeing friends from school and maybe seeing some friends from a different school and, making funny faces at the lifeguard and all the things that kids do. All of that can happen, and it doesn't necessarily need to have a certain level of attraction. Those are great things. I think those things are cool. But you can say, all right, if we've got this many dollars, we can do this kind of a project.
I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about the Riverline District. Councilor McCurris, you had mentioned this is going to go to a public vote at some point. Can you expand on that a little bit and at what point was that decided? And then I guess my other sort of to roll all into this is, why would something like that go to a public vote but not something like the Aquatics Bond? How do you guys make those kinds of determinations?
Great question. I think on the regards to the public vote for the Riverline, nothing's been decided. From me personally, and talking with other councilors, I know, for example, me personally, I would sponsor whatever action is necessary for the council to take something to an advisory vote for the Riverline District. When you're talking $200 million and adding in something that's not currently existing. So I could make the argument, for example, one reason why I think it's different than the current Aquatics Bond is this. And the aquatics thing, we're talking about replacing and enhancing. We've got an existing convention center. And so we're really making a shift with that, and it's a sizable shift, 2 times the amount, even more than 2 times the amount of the proposed aquatics package. And so I think that deserves a public vote at that level because it's going to impact, there's going to have to be debt service in some form, some fashion in our existing thing, unless somebody has a new revenue idea, which I'm not sure where a new revenue would come from, but it's going to have to come from existing tax dollars. So that's going to impact our 5-year capital plan substantially.
Hi. Oh, sorry. No. Just a quick follow-up. Do you have a timeline for when those kinds of decisions will be made? If the land is purchased this year, when would you guys move forward with that?
I don't. The Riverline District is really being led by the mayor's office, and I think my perspective personally, again, is that as us as councilors, that multiple of us have said, hey, if the mayor doesn't bring this forward to a public vote, we would bring this forward to a public vote. And the conversations I've had with the administration as well, I believe there's agreement with them as well that they want to take this forward as a public vote as well. So that's not a point of contention at all. I think the administration would really be driving the timeline of how that will work.
So, question on the Delbridge, because it seems that ever since the announcement was made that a lot of people have been passionate about it, and I know we know what the plan is, but is there still like a hope or a goal to keep this in Sioux Falls, or at this point, is it just whatever works best, or is that something that we are still gonna aim for if at all possible?
I think there's definitely an opportunity for it to remain local. The question is in regards to funding, really. We've seen an idea brought forward that'd be about $7.2 million to keep in the current master plan of the zoo to build a very specific, succinct museum on the current zoo site. So that's definitely an option. I think the question is really around the funding of that. How do we prioritize that? Does somebody from the community step forward and raise some funds, and we use government funds for the half, or however that would work, we don't know. So I would say this, it's definitely an option, but at the same time as we got to explore other options as well.